And today he's breaking down nothing but the charts.
BYND, just the biggest boy of the month. This was the spike I wanted. Right, this was the spike that I told myself to wait for because this is great. Getting short a 7+, risking off 8, that's the spot. All you needed is one more lower low, in my opinion, to then break these lows, and then now you get your confirmation. And so that's kind of what happened, where once we broke it, I then added a little bit more into that balance, and then seconds later, what first caught my eye on IREN was that it had this massive move from 10 to nearly 20. And then I realized, oh, it's in the data center sector. That's a hot sector. It's like, okay, I'm now up, at least 10% of my position. It's already fading in after hours, kind of giving you glimpses of a possible gap down. That would be enough for me to say, hey, giving me the green light, say, okay, let's swing it.
Welcome to 30 Minutes of Charts with Kyle Williams, fresh off his $600,000 month and $8.2 million in total profits. Kyle currently sits 5th on our all-time leaderboard, and today he's breaking down nothing but the charts. So join us as he walks us through his October 2025 trading performance. But first, before we start, Kyle, last time I saw you was on the back of a bus in a favela in Colombia. I think that story needs a little bit of context, but
About to say, it's like, wow, people are gonna question how that happened.
It was actually for a charity initiative. But Kyle, how are you? How's life? How's trading? You've recently been married. We were both not married.
Yes,
and we were both.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
You guys, that's what we were talking about when we were in the bus in Colombia. Yeah, congrats. That was cool. Yeah, when mine was in May. When was yours? It was a little bit later than that, right?
Mine was in June. Yeah,
June. Okay. Everything went well.
Yeah, one of the best days of my life. Yeah, it was a fantastic day.
Perfect.
And we got married outside. The rain came just after. And for you?
Yes. Everything was good. Same. The wedding day was amazing. The resort was awesome. And yeah, arguably best day of my life. It was great. So, but then other than that, yeah, trading's been good. Yeah, October coming in at my second best month. Didn't really have any expectation. I mean, I don't really ever have hard expectations, but as the month was progressing, it just kind of day trading wise and opportunity swing trading wise were just so good that one win and one streak kind of piled on top of another, and now I'm sitting at arguably my second best month if I don't, we have one more day of October, so knock on wood, I don't find a way to screw it up, but yeah, really good. I'm very happy with how it's gone. So.
Oh, it's fantastic. So we'll talk about the entire thing, but let's get straight into the charts, and let's make the first chart your Kinfo profit chart. So let's have a quick look at how your overall trend's going, and then let's just get straight into the recap of October.
Right. But yeah, this is my profit curve. Going back to, it's funny, this only goes by 2019, but I mean, really I didn't have much of a profit till then. Some of my oldest accounts were there too that I don't even have anymore, but you can't even tell the difference. It's so funny when the chart grows, all the little details that I used to be a part of or see or feel, you just can't even see anymore. Like my biggest loss at the time, you can't even see it anymore. So it's funny how far we've come, coming up on almost 10 years now since I first started. But yeah, here it is going, I don't want to say parabolic, but it's I've been speeding up as of the last couple of months. It's been nice, because we have 2 more months left of the year technically, and I've already technically passed my previous best year of 2021. So it's a good feeling, and lets me know I'm growing, and I think we can see that in the chart here in terms of just how extended it's getting. Run some technical analysis on my chart here, so.
No, I mean, and just thinking about that, is there anything that you attribute this recent parabolic to? I mean, obviously you're compounding, you're getting better, but is there anything about the market this year the market this month or this year that's really helped?
I think getting into swing trading made a big difference for sure. I mean, just using a hindsight bias of like adding up the profits that I have made from swing trading since implementing it, and then thinking about the fact, had I just not done that, like if I just said, you know what, another universe, I don't swing trade at all, I just keep day trading, would still be good, but like arguably pushing 7 figures of swing trading profits since May. I don't think I'm entirely, I'm thinking like right at the cusp of like 900 and change somewhere. But it's like you just kind of put that in perspective of like if I didn't swing trade, if I didn't start swing trading, I'd be, $900,000 and change less money in my pocket, right? And so I'd still be I'd still be having a very good year, but it's like, if I'm at 8.2, can call it, 7.3, you know what I mean? Like it would be a big cut out of this recent kind of move in the equity curve. So that's been a big help. But in general, also just like sizing up, I have been pushing size and slowly, going to new emotional levels of acceptance with losing, beforehand it was like, 10 years ago, it was like I lost $20 a day. It was the worst thing ever. Now we'll go over charts where I lost 20 grand and I feel slightly irritated, but I don't lose any sleep at night and I move on within a couple hours of reviewing the trade, right? It's like the scale at which I want to get and will continue to grow, I think will ideally, if I stay profitable, right, and have still continue my edge, like it's only going to increasingly, those numbers are only going to expand. So,
That's it.
so yeah,
It's incredible. And how did that evolution into swing trading, how did it come?
So it came from when there were like seeds along the way. So the first real seed was when I had my new biggest profit of November last year, 2024. So almost a year coming up now, where it wasn't all one trade. It was the same trade, but in multiple different accounts. But all in all the trade added up to like 600 grand plus in profits from MSTR, that I went long in it. And it was such a vastly bigger profit than I've ever seen before. Like I think the biggest profit I had prior to that was like 200 grand. So I just 3x my biggest profit, giving me my biggest month ever. And when I was reviewing my year, I was like, how do I replicate this, right? I understand I'm not going to replicate 600K gains like on a weekly or monthly basis, right? But if I can just pull pieces out of what I did right in this trade and try to implement it further in any strategy or risk management that I have, like where can we grow this? And ultimately what it came to, when I really broke it down and looked at it, I was like, well, I was swing trading. Like I held this thing for 2 months, almost 3 months. I think it was really like a month and a half. It was quicker than I thought it happened. But like I let the market or the stock work for me. It wasn't me trying to day trade every single day. It's like I literally just let this runner ride, 100, 200% in my favor. And when you have a lot of money on the line or in the stock, it's like that really, exponentially grows as so does the stock. And then I tried to can't I just be bigger on like some short sells I take or like on some day trades I take? And yes, of course I can. But not at the risk tolerance I'm at, not at the willingness to, push size I'm at. I mean, maybe in a few more years I can get to that level, but like where I stood currently to start 2025, I was like, I am nowhere near the day trading level or risk capacity to pull out what I just pulled out from a swing trade. So that really made me think like I should consider it. And then I kind of came across swing trading and actually learning how it's done. And I looked back and I reverse engineered it back to MSTR. I'm like, wow, I did it before I knew how to do it, because like if I already, in a hypothetical scenario, if I knew how to swing trade, and I saw MSTR, I would have bought it and as a swing trade and it would have made me good money. So it's like, I kind of, the apple or the egg became for the chicken, right? In terms of, or not the apple, the egg became for the chicken in terms of me like nailing a swing trade and then realizing, oh, this is what I should be doing and this is how to actually do it. And so that was the big motivator to do that and to get that started. So
That's just really interesting how that worked out. And then obviously, before we get into your charts now, I'll let you bring up the first one. I just want to pay credit. So if this series does well, if it takes off, we want to give the credit to you. And that's why we wanted to have you as the first person on, because Kyle has been giving back and reviewing charts on YouTube for as long as I remember. Must be 7-8 years. So it only felt right to do this with you first, this new series.
Perfect. Yeah, happy to be here. So all right, so I'll dive into a few of my maybe favorite and least favorite trades of the month. The first one I wanted to mention was Tesla. This was earlier in the month. Is actually in the form of TSLL. So we'll look at Tesla's chart, but TSLL was the actual vehicle I chose. And I think a lot of people who swing trade were watching this chart because it was one of those things where all of really, July, August, and then beginning of September, Tesla would kind of break out over previous highs and then just die, but then make a higher low and then try it again and then just die. And so every single time I gave this a try, and I think we talked about this in August recap and the September recap, but eventually I kept having conviction, like one of these new highs is not going to be a fake out. Like it's going to go eventually. And so that's when it finally did. So I bought this on September 11th here when it finally kind of broke out. Well, actually I shouldn't say that. I think I added to it. I remember buying one of these wicks. I actually bought the top of one of these days. I thought it was going to be that breakout over this previous high. Again, failed again. But the trend change was that instead of pulling all the way back down to say maybe this trend line on the higher lows, it held very well over these next like 2 or 3 days. And so then finally it went, I believe I added, and then we were off to the races. And so in terms of TSLL, I chose TSLL because it's a 2x leverage ETF of Tesla, so just double the move. And so pretty much from like the 14s or high 13s, and then I trimmed some, I believe, around either the 16s or the 19s here. Maybe a little of both, because then it gapped up on, I think Elon was buying shares. He had a file that he bought some shares. And then the matter of the rest of it is just swinging or trimming it, or not trimming it, trailing it against the moving averages. So once we closed below the 10 is when I stopped out. Now, on this day, on the 25th of September, technically TSLL closed below the 10. But again, I'm watching and following Tesla, and Tesla held above it just barely, like a couple of pennies, if not closed like right at it. So I stuck with it. But it didn't close below the 10 until October 3rd, right here. So that's when I finally sold the rest of my TSLL, locked in like 70K or so in profit there. So that was a good start to October, from September's work, let's call it, to lock that in. So that was the first one that was nice from a swing trading perspective. I actually stopped out today on it. I don't know too many to, but I longed it again, but then stopped out today because now it's just dead. It's not really, not dead, but it's just not as strong as it once was. So that'll be a future play. Maybe it tries again in the future, but that's the first swing trade. Sorry.
Can I just ask you one question? Can I ask you one question that I think a lot of people are going to want the answer to from a guy who's made 8 million? Like Tesla down in the area that it was, I can understand that you can see the upside, you can see it's trying to break out. But at a time like this, where there's kind of a lot of fear about the markets, and is AI propping everything up, and how is SPY making new highs, and is the middle class hitting, but the market's being propped up by these AIs? I mean, do you have any thoughts on the overall markets? Because as a swing trader, you must be watching for an incoming crash.
Yeah, I watch the cues closely. I'm not particularly worried about that idea. Like I get it looms. Like I've the more I've swing traded, the more I learned the saying, like the indexes just follow the wall of worry. It's like we go higher, but every day we go higher, there's always some kind of thing to worry about, right? Like when does it end, or what if this bad news comes out? And so maybe we're due for a bigger recession or pullback period, but until then, I would put it this way, I would much rather put on risk trades and stop out in the name of a recession or a pullback happening than trying to anticipate that recession or pullback and then it not happen for 6 more months, a year later, and I never bought those swing trades or those trades leading to it. So, if the NASDAQ goes another 50% higher over 3 years, and then finally the AI bubble pops, or then finally, something happens, of course, the people who are screaming bubble at the top of their lungs will be like, yeah, I'm finally right. But a saying that I recently learned I really like is like, bears sound smart, bulls make money, right? Now you don't want to be just a blind bull and just don't have a stop losses. Like, still take the trades with risk management, but trying to guess when that party is over, I think is an activity that won't really make you money. And if you actually if you're putting your money where your mouth is and shorting it, you're probably losing money until you're finally right, and who knows when that is. Versus just not stop fighting the trend and join the trend, being on the long side with risk management, so you don't get caught off guard if it does end, right? That party ends, and then just take the trades when you see them. Because I know what you mean. I definitely am worried of like, is this over? Is the party over? Like when we pulled back, any one of these pullbacks, I'm like, it's been fun, but we just we keep finding bases and we keep making new highs and keep going forward. So you got to just ride with it as it comes.
I love that.
So yeah, that was the first swing trade. The first day trade I wanted to go over, because this is one of my more favorite ones, because I'm really happy with how I traded this. I don't think I could have traded this any better in terms of just having the right idea around it. BURU here one of the crappier, there's a bunch of crappy small cap stocks, but when we look at when you see a daily chart like this where it is just constantly bleeding, there's never a period of uptrending anywhere here. Every spike, every gap is just, gets obliterated. And so starting October, we had a really good run. We go from, 13 cents all the way as high as 84. Now, a lot of a type of red day that I always share or talk about sometimes is it's not a red day, but it's going to be a green candle, or it's going to be a red candle, but a green day as a sign of the potential top. And so that's kind of what I saw coming in on this day, where we ran from, a kind of a blow off a green candle from 30 cents to 50 cents. And then we gap up another, 20 cents a share. We pretty much double this candle's range just in a gap up, right? Or do it again. We don't double it, but we literally just do it all over again, just the gap up price. And so knowing how crappy this ticker is, knowing how dilutive they are, and, how pretty much set up for failure they eventually are when the run stops, I was bearish kind of going into today. And so I show you the intraday chart. This is one here. Let's open this up. How do I open in browser? There we go. And so this was the intraday. So I actually got short right out the open thinking it was just going to crap itself. That was wrong. So I immediately cut it for a small loss. Actually cut half, then cut the rest over 76-ish. I think that was pre-market highs. I should have screenshotted. Maybe we go back into it. Can I go back far enough to see what level it was? There was some extra level I wanted to risk. And so I eventually just ended up cutting it. Oh, pull that out. No. Come on, keep loading for me. We're still going. Come on.
So what date was this?
This was, I don't want to go to the daily chart now, but this was October, what looks like 8th? October 8th into 9th? Yeah, here we go. Yeah, pre-market highs here was 77, 76-ish. And so I cut the rest going up into that level. And then parabolics, or not parabolics, but a really strong spike into 85. And at this moment, I'm thinking, okay, the next possible level that I could remotely think of failing would be $1, right? So there was a world where if this went into the 90s, I might just take a small stab, risking $1, thinking it fails around that area. And then it just fails out of nowhere, right? Just immediately down. I'm like, okay, it might not actually even get to $1. And so then I thought, if we can't go over that high, it's I'm lowering and downgrading my expectations of this. If this can't even get to $1, yeah, I was early out the open, but if it can't can't even get over these highs, again, we're up from 10 cents a week ago. And so I just envision this is going to roll over. And so that's exactly what happened, right? We kind of put in these higher highs, and then eventually we make that first lower low, and then it starts collapsing. So if we go into that actual trades of them, right? I started reshorting a little bit. When I mentioned this can't even get to $1, and if it doesn't get to $1, then it's not going to get over these highs. And if the highs are in, that's kind of when I take these first two candles here, thinking let's get short, let's get a feeler in there. And then I shorted some more, thinking a new lower low was coming. It needed one more bounce, and then finally it did a lower low. And so then I covered on the flush towards sub 60, because I think red green at the time was what? If we go one more day over, right? It was down here at what was it? 45, 50. So quite a big pullback to have, to where I just didn't think it was going to pull all the way to that level. Because a lot of times when they gap up so much and they sell off so much, it doesn't always go red. They actually might find support before it goes red and then bounce. I did not want to get caught in a bounce. So that's why I did cover all of it here, into this pull. But then when I was thinking, if it can bounce, I want to reshort for it to go overnight, especially if it can close weak and then have still, fail resistance at the highs. And so I'm really happy with this bounce, because then it allowed me to reshort it. And I really I kind of wish in hindsight I added at more towards 75, because it doesn't shock me that the 75 bounce high here failed, all of this which once was support for, 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't shock me that it failed right at the lows. These highs were these lows. And so then it rolled into the close, and then I swung it overnight. And then the next day, if we just drag it over here, right, we gap down, right? We open, so we closed what? We closed at 60 something and change, 66 cents, 68 cents, 67. We open up down here at 55, so quite a big gap down, and then we flushed to 45, and I think I covered the rest. I don't remember if I covered it all or yeah, here's my trade. Let's pull that up. Cover the resting that panic.
Overnight. Because some people might be thinking, oh my God, it's a stock under $1. It's 70 cents. It can go to $70. You know how people can think about micro caps.
Yeah.
Is it too dangerous to swing that? But is it like a momentum thing that you just think, and so many people are underwater, it's not got much chance of
Yeah, I mean, it totally is a risk. Like, having that fear is perfectly justified, and honestly, you should have. Like, if you don't, then you're not aware of the risks, right? So it is good to think that. The couple aspects or keys to where I get comfortable is if, one, I've already locked in profits, so like I already have a cushion. Good. That means worst case, like, or the worst, or not the worst case, but a worst case, it gaps up. I take a big loss, but I've locked in some. It cushions the blow. That's number one. Two would be if it's already confirming price action for me, that now not only do I have a cushion, but then I'm already up on the position. So being short like I did, the trades there from, I reshorted with like probably a 69 average, 70 average or so, being up by the close at 64 cents and then it fading in after hours, I believe by the end of 62 cents. It's like, okay, I'm now up, at least 10% of my position. It's already fading in after hours, kind of giving you glimpses of a possible gap down. That would be enough for me to say, hey, I've gotten everything I could possibly do to catch this gap down, giving me the green light, say, okay, let's swing it. Vice versa, you can probably tell the flip opposite of that. It's like, okay, I already am red on the ticker. It's not fading. I'm actually down on my position. Instead of fading in after hours, it's actually uptrending, looking like it's going to make higher highs. It's like that kind of gives me too much indication, like, hey, this might gap up and I need to be careful, right? The only thing you can't control, which is true for both longs and shorts, is if like news comes out that is good or positive and either crushes the stock or spikes it up huge. That's just the fat tail risk of swing or taking something overnight, no matter who you are. And it's up to you whether you want to take that risk, right? I have, more times than not are okay with it. But some people don't swing at all or take anything overnight for that reason. And that's totally fine. It's just when I get everything in my what's it called? When I get everything in my favor, like I did on BURU, it's hard for me not to take it because it's almost like I'm willing to take the risk of possibly taking a bad loss if it gaps up over the pain of missing a gap down. Like I have, and maybe that's just my FOMO speaking, but I have hated it too many times where like I'm not certain, but I'm super convinced it's going to gap down, but I don't want to take it because of the risks, right? Or because I just don't want to take that risk overnight. And then it does gap down, and because it gapped down like BURU did here, there's no way I would have reshorted this. You know what I mean? Like knowing I should have had a 60 something or 70 cent average and then reshorting it at 53, like that's my profit right there. That's the difference. That's not my new entry. I'm covering here, not entering here. And that really tilts me, like in terms of, not money risk, but like your emotional being risk. Like nothing tilts me more than trying to get short on a gap down where I feel like I should have been profiting and not entering. So anyways, I'm rambling on, but that's kind of where my brain is at when I think about these things.
No, it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. And are you waking up a little bit early the following day, just in case? Is that a 6 o'clock wake up? Oh,
that's true. Yeah. So I will admit I won't wake up and stay up the whole time. But if I wake up and in the first hour, like everything seems normal, it's not just rocketing out of nowhere. It's actually still, by this time, BURU was actually, after the spike, it was still fading, right? And it's actually, confirming more of a gap down. Or sorry, it wasn't here, it was here. All right. So a small spike and then it's even fading lower. Like at that point, I'll go back to sleep. So yeah, it's like, yeah, I'll check on it. But if we are even more confirming, then I will be willing to sleep through a little bit of this chop here. So
make money in your sleep.
We try. So, but yeah, so this was a good first red day. And you look at the daily chart, it's like, it was a beautiful gap down and wash further, locked in like 50K or so on that one. And that's between both. That's between, locking in on this portion and then taking them right and then locking in again. So kind of two trades into one, but the same general thesis and idea. So 50K there. The next one is also a swing. I think it was my better swing of the month. Let me pull up TradingView so you can see it there. IREN. So IREN is in the data center sector. And so we kind of talk about Tesla with robotics and AI, right? a big driver for the AI theme is like they need data centers, right? They need data centers to actually have the AI work and do the computing, right? And there's a lot of demand for it. And IREN is one of those data center companies. Now, I actually missed the first part of this move. I remember being long, right? I think one of these days, only to get stopped out and shaken out on this pullback in like middle of August. And then didn't rebuy. So I got stopped out in like the 19s, 20 area, watch it then run to 23. And I'm like, oh, I missed it. Like that sucks. Then they post earnings and then gap up another, $3 or $4 a share. And then I'm pissed. I'm like, damn it, this is actually a swing that's working. I'm going to miss this thing. And now I have massive FOMO. One of those scenarios where like just staying patient and not chasing actually kind of helped me, because it spiked, it came back down, and all I could notice was that over these 3 days, even though it kind of sold under it, it kept holding the earnings day high or day low, right? The low of this day was what, 26.48? And so it didn't hold 26 perfectly, but it continued to try to sell off and just couldn't, right? And even on this last day here on the 8th of September, it tried again, couldn't, and this is on this yellow line is the 10 SMA, which is a big moving average I like to look at and use. And it was the first time tapping that SMA and then immediately rejecting and bouncing right off of it. Since it ran, since I missed the run, that's the first time it tapped the 10 and it was like allergic. I mean, immediately bounces off, wants nothing to do with it. And so I thought to myself, it may be a low odds idea, but risk reward wise, getting long in the 26s and only having to risk like $1 a share lower, given that it's built some really good support here over the last week. I was like, in a hot sector, in a company that just posted massive earnings, like they increased their earnings by 270%, right? I was like, it's worth the shot, right? And so I bought some on this day, and the next day it gapped up, and then it ran more, and it kept going. I think I trimmed some. My first trim was at like 33, and then we started getting more parabolic into like the 50s or the 40s, so I trimmed some more at like 48. Still holding the 10 the entire way. Finally, we get a little bit crazier. I don't remember selling any up here because at some point I have to stop selling and just trust the entirety of the moving averages. And then finally on this day, it closed below it at like $60 a share. And I sold the rest there. So I locked in, how much was that total? 138,000 on that swing. And I really didn't even have that big a position. Like and this is my more maybe further confirmation of what we talked about with the MSTR win of like, sometimes just letting it work and having me able to ride it from 26 to nearly 70, like I didn't really have that big of a dollar position than some day trades I take, but because it's just like you just have the patience to ride a 150% move, almost 200% move. I mean, it was approaching 75, which would have been 200% for me, or close to it. Like it was just. I can't pull out 100K gains on a daily basis with day trading, but when the swings work, and they really work, like 100K profit is like almost, and nothing's guaranteed, but it's like if they work, the swing trades work for me, it enters that realm fairly quickly, which is cool. And so that was a big contributor, to the profits of this month was this the gain.
It's such a fantastic trade example. Like, can I just ask, what put IREN on your radar for the first time? Because it's not a top percent gain on. It's not like, oh, it's up 60%. How is it looking?
Yeah. So some of the scans that I like, and this is the scans from Kuolagi. He'll like to scan for stocks up 30% or either over 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months. And I actually have them right here, right? So TradingView allows me to like make those scans over a certain time frame. I have to change them though. It all thinks I'm the same scan, so I have to change this from like 30 over 3 months to 6 months. If I do like 6 months here, but it'll give me kind of more higher valued stocks in the mid cap and large cap space that have been up at least 30% in the last 6 months or 3 months or 1 month. And from there, that then gives me the charts to go through and say, hey, if they start if they're in a hot sector, they have good news or in the right place, right time, or just technically look good. Like what first caught my eye on IREN was that it had this massive move from 10 to nearly 20. So I wasn't even a part of this move. I didn't see IREN until it made this move. And then I realized, oh, it's in the data center sector. That's a hot sector. It's technically holding up. It also looks good when you see it actually respect moving averages, like because some stocks can go up and not give a crap about what moving averages hold and don't hold. But when IREN was like clearly holding this 10 SMA so well after already running 100%, right? it let me know that, hey, if this is ever going to trend again, like it's got good characteristics to do so, or at least good history of the characteristics to do so. And so that is all I really needed to just keep watching it. And the moment I kind of see like it breaking out or making new highs, or again, sometimes a little bit different where I miss the highs, but I see a new support level forming on the moving average that it already respects. First, so risk reward is tight. Sometimes it's just like there's no perfect entry, but it's like if you can just get a good risk reward spot in a trend that you have confidence is going to continue, that's kind of what leads some of these winners. So that was the case for IREN and how I kind of came across this one.
Yeah, I love it. Just the fact that it's for everyone. This is a trade for everyone, not just the day traders who quit the jobs. This is for someone who's going to work every day. I love it.
Totally, 100%. So then the other couple trades I wanted to talk about was obviously the biggest one. I think most people are probably have traded or are looking into it, or BYND, just the biggest boy of the month. Good and bad about this one. Definitely walked away green, definitely improved from previous runners of this magnitude, because the biggest one I can remember is FFIE, or now FFAI, where I took my biggest loss in my career just being overly aggressive way too soon on something that moves 10,000%. BYND wasn't that big of a percent gain, but I think it was big in magnitude of like the volume was massive, the hype was massive. It was Wall Street bets, just like FFAI or FFIE at the time. Like it had so many similar characteristics. And so I traded this one much, much better, but I definitely got chopped up on the front side, just being too eager, too early. Thankfully, learned my lesson from FIE. So I stayed within the realms of safe, which allowed me to be there for the backside. But just massive, massive move, from 60 cents to $7, 7 and change over really 3 days. And where it started for me was getting chopped up on this day. Similar, well, at the time, again, we're speaking hindsight, so it's easy for me to say I knew this, this was going to be some massive runner, right? But when it gapped up, so we go from 60 cents and then a run to $1.50, and then we gap up to 230. At this point in time, I'm thinking a similar thing to the BURU thesis, right? Like it's like this just ran massively. It's gapping up even more. It's like, what are the odds this gap holds itself and can't keep going higher? And so I kind of start getting short out the open here on the 21st of October. Let me pull up the trades here. Here it is. It's so funny because it ran so much further, right? But at the time in the morning, this is me getting short in the morning, right? And it actually worked. Like my idea was like, I'm going to get short like 230s, 220s. I think this can sell off sub 2. But unlike BURU, I didn't cover it sub 2. I was getting a little bit greedy, a little bit overconfident, thinking like, okay, sub 2 is the minimum, but let's see like 170, 180, 160s. And that just wasn't the case, right? Like again, going into the intraday of the whole thing, it tapped like 193 or whatever it was, right? Let me zoom in. All right, where's the low? 193. And just that was the rest. That's all you ever got. So here I am, thinking of being aggressive, and I cover nothing. And so then I cover some, and then I realized, no, I should probably risk some off the highs. I don't really know. Let me try to be fancy and reshort some more. So reshort, cover that, try it again, cover that. And so before you know it, I'm down. I lost more than I really want to. I only really wanted to lose like 20, 25K-ish on this trade. But by the time I cut it all, here over high days as it's making new highs, I'm down like 40, 50 grand. So not the end of the world, still within the means of my risk management on the higher end, but like not what I really wanted to lose. So that was annoying. Where it gets a little bit worse, but also in a different sector, or where things get kind of tough, is like, okay, I lost, let's call it 45 grand shorting this thing when I thought it was going to be like a gap and crap kind of idea. But now it's going parabolic. So even though this is going to all come under the same trade from a broker statement, right? I have to mentally view it separately of like, it's no longer a gap and crap idea. It's now a parabolic short. So it's very tough to do, and it looks worse when you lose, like I did in this case. But it's like, to me, there was at least 2 different setups here. Unfortunately, both ended up being losers, right? So it ended up being worse than possible, or worse than it should have been. But I start trading, get parabolic, good short here, cover that. A lot of chop here. Don't really get much done. End up losing another maybe 20, 30 grand. Then it goes parabolic for real, like the real parabolic in after hours. And this one I felt really good about. And I actually, in terms of the arrows and how it worked out, I nailed it. To the point where if I had actually covered it all down here at the 330s, I remember covering like 60 or 70% of it. I left some piece because I thought it might go sub 3, it might just get really ugly. So that was the greed in me thinking it could go lower, and it didn't. And so in hindsight, knowing the numbers, just the rough math in my head, had I actually covered it all there, I actually would have made the entire day's loss back. So was close to, saving myself, didn't. But then I thought to myself, okay, that's gotta be it. Like that death from, nearly 5 to 3, like that's the backside. The backside's gonna begin. I was wrong. It bounces, so I reshort the bounce thinking it's backside. It comes all the way back to the highs, and I'm like, holy crap, like, back to the BURU example where I'm talking about where holding something short overnight should be, I should have a profit locked in, it should be fading in my favor, I should already be in a profit on the trade, it shouldn't be looking to hold highs and making new lows. Like, everything about BURU was like, I should probably hold this overnight, it's worth the risk for me. BYND here, the total opposite. I'm red on the ticker, I barely made my gains back, but I'm reshorting now, giving back those gains to be red on the ticker again. It's not making new lower lows. I'm now down on the short when it, after these ads on this bounce, I'm now, back over when it goes back over like 450. I'm now down on the position, and it's just not fading, right? So by the close, I cover it. I'm like, there's no way I can risk this overnight. It is doing everything under the sun that I do not want it to do. So I cut it. So a total between, the whole, morning and night, I lost about in total like 64 grandish in total. So pretty much 40 or so of it was here, and then between losing it and then making it back and then losing some more, another like 24 there or so, or another 20. So in this 60K loss range, which for a single trade would be a lot. It'd be like A+ risk if it was just one trade. But like, that's kind of why I mentioned it was kind of two setups in one that just unfortunately I took it the same broker on the same ticker, so naturally it's going to be combined into one from a tracking standpoint. So I'm not too upset with it. It's just how it all played out, and had I just been a little bit smarter with not being so aggressive here and actually then not being so greedy here, it could have been massively different. But the cool part is, and the great part about it, about me cutting it, is it did get better, right? It did then go on to actually gap up and go higher. To the point where now the opportunity is only getting better. And then again, it just comes down to how well can I manage my risk. Can I pull that? There we go. Right. So covered it there, immediately gaps up +5+. So again, for people who like are worried about the risks of holding overnight, like that's the risk of overnight. That's why you need to, actually know whether it's worth the risk or not. And no part of BYND was worth it. And then it goes parabolic to nearly 9. Now I was asleep here. Right, I wanted a good night rest. The day prior was super exhausting. If I could go in hindsight, I totally would have waken up because being there for this parabolic would have been awesome. But again, it's easy to say in hindsight, oh, I would have shorted it, 850 and timed the top perfectly. Like I have no idea if I would have tried here first and then got stopped out and then tried again and it would have worked. But the point is, I didn't wake up until pretty much like 8:30 Eastern here. And so in terms of then showing the trade for the next day, let me pull it up. Right on here, I start getting short in pre-market into this push, kind of thinking this is going to be resistance from the big parabolic in pre-market. That was right, but I covered that pretty early. Unfortunately, I only locked in. I took it from 720 only down to like 680. So I really didn't overstay my welcome there, and I should have, because by the open it's flushing and it's going lower on out the open. Now, where this gets me twisted a little bit is I kept thinking like, it's like I had to do what I did yesterday all over again. And this one was a little bit better in the sense that it kind of tricked me, where instead of just kind of failing and fading like it did in the day prior and make me think like, oh, I'm immediately right, only for it to come back, it gave me enough confidence to keep trying, but not enough to die, right? So it pulls, it spikes higher, can't even make barely new highs in the day, right? Or it almost double tops it, then fails again pretty hard, then comes up but makes a lower high, then goes again. So we're kind of like making this wedge here. And again, I'm so bearish at this point that like I'm not really acknowledging the wedge. I'm just thinking like this is going to die. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It just gets one more gust of strength, and this stops me out again. Looking at the chart there, right? So I stop out a little bit over there. I then stop out at my like not max stop, but my last level of kind of area that it should fade, right? I was kind of using now this last market top or pre-market high. So when it went over there, I cut it. That was this arrow right here, cutting it there. And so at this point, I am down like 60 plus K, right? This was like the A plus trade that I was willing to take, and I was willing to be down. I actually think it was down more like 80K, like with some slippage. And after giving it a few tries, you could see here, it wasn't just like one cover. I had like one small cover there, another cover there. So not down more than I'm willing to. Like I think my max stop is around 100. So I was getting close before I gave up the towel. But it sucked. I was like, damn it. We're not down, but we're pretty beaten up at this point. And unfortunately for me, I just knew in my brain of like, if this is going to die, like I can't not be there, but I need to be more precise. This is when I was able to kind of reset and think to myself, like, okay, Kyle, you were just like blindly too strong and too aggressive again. Like, let's take a deep breath and reset. And I'm really glad I did that because instead of just starting in max size, like again, if we look at the arrows, you can clearly see like I'm not wasting any time getting short. Like I'm just immediately like bam, 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 like massive size and then just wrong. Once I reset, I say, let's just ease into it. So you actually do see me immediately reshort about 3 or 4 minutes later. And this was like a 5% position of what I had. So like literally nothing. This was me just to get my feet wet, to reset and just like, okay, let's just have a position, but be more less aggressive, less erratic about it, less sporadic. And then it just came in the fact that now it was fading, right? It wasn't having these like big pulls and then big spikes and, huge wins higher. It was like trying and then failed and then trying and then failed and then trying and then failed, which is like different than what we had. And then something I really noticed was that once we kind of broke this little, like, I don't want to call it a trend line, 'cause I don't really draw trend lines in the intraday, but we had this higher high, higher high, higher high. And then this higher high kind of perfectly, like if I could draw a line, it looks right perfectly with that. And then we rolled over and then that was like, okay, like this probably is it, and again, you don't know for sure, but in terms of like breaking trend back below VWAP now, all you needed is one more lower low, in my opinion, to then break these lows. And then now you get your confirmation. And so that's kind of what happened where once we broke up, I then added a little bit more into that balance. And then, seconds later, it was when that flush started happening. So like as the trade went on, I just had more kind of confirmation as price action kind of started fulfilling what I was thinking, or I was getting confirmation from what I was thinking immediately being right. And then the flush happened, right? So then I'm covering some, at 5, some at 450, some at 4. I'm thinking of covering into red green because I just don't think it goes straight down right away. Kind of back to what we talked about with BURU, like at some point it could solve so much that actually a red green could be support and not resistance, or like more failure. And so then it bounced. I was really, really, really hoping for a move or bounce 5+ to kind of get short again where these lows were. So like 550, 5 or in that range. But unfortunately just couldn't. And in fact, started looking super weak. We started making again another lower high after and almost another trend break. Like again, I didn't even see this at the time, but like you see another like low, lower low, and then it can't keep that trend going, the bounce going. So then another leg comes lower. So I do reshort smaller size quickly on that break and then cover it immediately more quickly because I just don't think it's going to have another $3 a share flush from 7 to 4. So I'm covering it. I'm shorting at 4. I'm covering it like immediately at 3. 290, and then I think I cover the rest like 280. And then bounces and it goes even lower. I mean, I didn't take part in this short, unfortunately. But the fading never ended practically. It barely made new lows by a few cents, but then that was that. So between lost like what was it, 60 something K the day before, lost then another close to 80 on the front side. But after all said and done, by the red day, I think it was up 150 or so. Somewhere around there. Because I also dip bought, these arrows don't show up, but I dip bought in a different account. This one and this one. Didn't make much on this one because again, the bounce didn't work. But then I do remember rebuying some at like 280, 290-ish, and then sold that in the high 3s. So that helped out, but that wasn't really the bulk of it. Obviously, the short was the massive bulk of it. So yeah, sorry, I've been going a long time there, but that was the the massive momentous runner of the month, which is crazy. And even now, right, it's back at, $1, $1.60, which is crazy. So
But I wanted to ask you about, I mean, two questions. I mean, the first one would be, and then we can kind of wrap up because I'm going to have to change the name of the show to the 45-minute recap.
sorry, yeah, we're going a long time.
No, like people will be screaming at the television, don't cut him off, don't cut him off. I'm learning, don't have I learned before. But two questions really is, one, would you change anything about that trade in hindsight? Have you learned anything from that trade, or is that just the game of trading?
No. So well, yes and no. It's the game of trading. It's the game of trading in the sense that, you're never going to be perfect. So even if you had the right plan, there are still going to be times where you're going to screw up and you have to make that mental reset, like mid-trade or mid-day, like I did at the top here, where it's like, you got to get your crap together or you're going to screw this up more than you already have. So because as a discretionary trader, you're just going to make those mistakes. So yes, it's a part of trading, but if I could go back and really cement what I think would have worked, because to put into perspective, part of context too was like, I was shorting this here, this first starter in the 720s, thinking that the ultimate high is going to be this 880s. Like, it's not going to go over these highs. Like, that's the game plan of thesis. I could have been dead wrong, but I was like, if there's any high odds play here, it's not going to go over these highs. Like, that's the highest odds play here. And so I was telling myself into the open, like, you need to be positioning yourself to use this as risk until you get better confirmation, right? Because I thought in my mind, like, if it's going to try to spike, it could spike again 7+. I remember telling myself pre-market that. Unfortunately, when it died more than I thought by a market open, that's when I started getting screwed up. I was like, crap, this is weaker than I thought. I didn't think it would go sub 6 this quickly yet. And like that whole plan from wanting to use this as resistance as a game plan turned into, screw that, let's just get short wherever we can and hope it dies, right? Like one trade plan is very thought out. The other is just like, crap, having FOMO, need to get short, right? Very different. So that's what kind of screwed me up. And that's kind of what helped me then reset and then get short immediately after, because then I realized, I was like, wait a minute, if I wasn't so FOMO based or so wanting to get short aggressively with no real great plan here, and I actually waited for this spike, this was the spike I wanted, right? This was the spike that I told myself to wait for, because this is great. Getting short a 7+, risking off 8, or the mid 8s or any one of these resistance levels from pre-market. I'm like, that's the spot. Now, whether it was going to fade after spiking was another question, but at least you were patient and let the entry come to you versus you go chasing the entry, right? Here I was chasing the entry versus letting it spike to you, where the original plan was like, get short a strength and then use this as risk level. Like, that's letting it come to you, and then you're not in control. The trade can do whatever it wants, but emotionally you're in control. Like, you're in control of your own trade plan and what you expected and what you're willing to wait for, versus just FOMOing in because I thought I was going to die weaker than it should have, only to be proven wrong, but then right on the original idea where I had to reset myself. So if I can go back in time, I would have, obviously it's perfectly said, and it can't be that perfect to not touch it at all here and then touch it here, but getting too aggressive here and then not being aggressive enough here is what I would have switched, because I would have loved to have only taken small losses here, but then really use this as the entry that I originally wanted. It would have been a much bigger trade to be, just from a risk reward perspective and just a more size at a higher average. Waiting for this would have been that spot for sure.
Makes sense. And I guess the last question from me before I ask you who you'd like to nominate to do this next would be, I guess the swings that you've swung short as well, because like this company is massively in debt. It actually restructured its debt for shares, which was a super bearish catalyst to make the stock go down to where it is now. And it's also got huge potential dilution in the form of ATMs.
Yep.
So was the reason why you didn't swing it?
Over the first red day. So it's funny. Yes, there was. And in fact, because I screwed up, not screwed up, but because I didn't make as much on the short as I thought of, like, obviously I was very happy to have made back my losses and then be well green on it. But then I looked at how big of the opportunity this was to go from, again, 9 to 3 in a single day. I was like, wow, Kyle, like, this should have been, this should have really been big. And so my brain started thinking, like, well, what are the bounces again? Like, what if we get another bounce to like 4 or 5? Like, what if we finally get a bounce later in the day or the next day? So I started getting bullish. Like, I wasn't necessarily going to long it overnight for a gap. I originally did think it could, but when it started fading so heavily to new lows, I was like, no, this isn't going to work. But I was kind of not bullish, but I kind of wanted a bounce. I wanted a redo, so to speak. So I didn't really intend on gapping it down or taking short to swing it, because I kind of was hoping for a move higher. And something similar to FFAI, when a ticker does sell off way too harshly, sometimes they do actually gap up. Like FFAI, going from, this was pre-split by the time, it went from $4 to $1. And so some people think because it was so weak, oh, it's got to go lower. But sometimes it catches people off guard and actually is due for a bounce overnight, because this then gapped up from $1 to like $2 or like $2.50 at the time or something around there. And then it faded again. So I was kind of thinking like, hey, if there's a world I get a redo, it might be, on a gap up. It might be like a surprise gap up to like 450, was kind of like my hopes and guess. So that is why I did not swing it. But honestly, even if I did, it didn't actually go lower than the day's low. So it would have been a gain, but it would have been kind of confusing of like thinking it should go lower and then not, but then trying to bounce, but failing. So it was kind of an awkward inside day before it then eventually, broke down and stuff. So.
Makes sense. Kyle, we're going a little bit over than I've requested of your time, but
apologies.
No, it's not. You've give great value. I think it's an excellent first episode of a new series. Do you have anyone that you'd like to nominate to be the next person, the next trader from Kinfo that does this 30-minute monthly recap next month?
Obviously, I think the next best guy who reviews and has a killer month is Laptop Legend. I also think someone who's on the Kinfo leaderboard that's really good, a really good educator, EduTrades, Eduardo. I think he would be good. So I'd love to see their episodes and see how they do, and watch them review their trades.
Awesome. I will try my best. I believe we can get Edu or Laptop Legend to review in November. But Kyle, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your transparency. Thank you for coming on, being a part of Kinfo. You're one of the best advocates of the trading community that we have.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.